Welcome back. Today, we're diving into a step-by-step explainer on how to launch a local app on a literal bootstrap budget. We're going to unpack a super specific tactical ad playbook designed to solve one of the absolute hardest problems in business, starting a two-sided marketplace from total scratch without completely breaking the bank. So, the big question, can you realistically launch an app on just $100 a week? Well, we're looking at ServSprint. It's a live GPS radar app built for local service pros out in Utah County. And honestly, this is a classic David versus Goliath scenario. Building a two-sided marketplace from nothing, people call that a million-dollar problem because you've got to acquire both the buyers and the sellers at the exact same time to make the whole thing work. We're going to see exactly how a scrappy startup takes on that massive customer acquisition challenge, especially when they're up against these giant, deep-pocketed lead generation companies. And that brings us to this number, $400. Just let that sink in for a second. That is our entire total monthly budget for this campaign. I mean, most tech startups spend more than that on office coffee in a single week. It sounds, well, mathematically impossible to launch a business on this, right? But we're going to dissect exactly how this specific strategy turns a tiny, fixed budget into a scrappy, data-driven guerrilla growth machine. It's all about resourcefulness and just extreme calculated precision. So here's our ultimate blueprint for bootstrapping this growth. We'll start with the micro-budget challenge, then look at deploying that $100 a week, followed by the 60-40 audience split. After that, we'll hit core messaging and creative, map out the 30-day timeline, and finally finish up with tracking the real ROI. Let's get into it. Section 1, the micro-budget challenge. Now, before spending a single dime of that $400, the initial strategy actually had them validating their core messaging through free organic posts. Think posting in local Facebook groups and on Nextdoor, really just to see what resonated with actual people. But now we're moving into the paid challenge. The absolutely crucial point to remember here is managing your expectations. This is a learning budget, not a scaling budget. The goal for this first month is definitely not to flood the app with thousands of users. If you judge month 1 by raw user volume, you're going to be deeply disappointed. And honestly, you'll probably just quit. The real goal is discovering your true cost per signup. It's about figuring out which marketing hook actually converts a total stranger into a user. Basically, you're buying data and insights here, not a massive user base. Moving to Section 2, deploying $100 a week. How in the world do we deploy this strict limit across multiple platforms without spreading the campaign so thin that we don't learn anything at all? Check out the heavy concentration strategy they use. Instead of taking a week $25 and spreading it equally across the board, the budget is aggressively weighted. Combined Meta, so Facebook and Instagram, takes up 65% of the total spend. Why? Well, because that's the ultimate net for the gig worker audience. Plumbers, cleaners, local pros, they are highly active in local Facebook community groups. Then 20% goes to Nextdoor, which is the ultimate hyperlocal platform for the customer side. It's where homeowners are already hanging out complaining about their leaky roofs or asking for landscaper recommendations. Finally, that last 15% goes to Google to catch those high-intent, bottom-of-the-funnel, plumber-near-me kind of searches. It's a really calculated deployment designed perfectly to intersect intent and attention. Section 3, the 60-40 audience split. Obviously, a marketplace needs both buyers and sellers, so the budget purposefully splits its resources to fuel both sides of this dual-sided equation. This strategy leans 60% toward recruiting the pros, the operators and gig workers. Just picture an exhausted contractor sitting in his truck at the end of a ridiculously long day, constantly hitting refresh on local Facebook groups, just hoping to be the very first person to comment on a homeowner's post. It is exhausting. So the core hook for them is massive, escaping that endless feed refresh. Then the remaining 40% of the budget targets the customers. That side focuses purely on the sheer convenience of reaching out to their entire local network instantly with just one single post. You can see how the distinct messaging maps perfectly to those specific pain points. For the pros, the hook is simple. Get texted local jobs. For the customers, it's post once, reach every local pro. It is all centered around first-party consented leads, meaning users actually asked to be contacted. It totally avoids those sketchy automated scraping tactics where bots just scrape phone numbers and emails off the internet. Those tactics create huge privacy concerns, and honestly, they get banned by platforms super fast anyway. This strategy is strictly about building real, opted-in connections. All right, Section 4, core messaging and creative. How do you actually speak to these distinct groups? Well, the playbook uses real, raw war stories to speak plain-spoken, peer-to-peer truth directly to frustrated contractors. It completely ditches the stiff corporate ad speak. Take a look at this pay-to-see complaint. It goes right for the throat of the giant lead gen apps by targeting a very specific extreme pain point. We're talking about the reality of paying just to see a lead that might be fake, might never respond, or was literally never intended to book a job in the first place. On those big platforms, the local pro carries 100% of the risk. By putting this real, visceral complaint front and center in the ad creative, the campaign immediately builds trust. Why? Because it proves they actually understand the contractor's daily struggle. They get it. The campaign then directly calls out the broken math of the industry. Imagine one single customer inquiry being sent out to 5 different local pros. Every single one of those pros is forced to pay a hefty fee for that exact same shared lead, even though only one of them, if any, is actually going to win the job. The ad copy argues that this mathematical setup only exists to enrich the platform itself, completely at the expense of the hardworking local business. It's an incredibly powerful narrative to run against the big incumbents. And then we get to ServSprint's winning counteroffer. For the customer side, it's all about efficiency. Post once, reach every match. But for the pros, the offer is a total paradigm shift. They get a flat subscription, 30 days entirely free, and instant text alerts to matching jobs with absolutely zero per lead fees. Knowing you're never going to pay for a dead lead again is a massive psychological relief for a contractor. The contrast against their competitors is night and day, making it a total no-brainer. Section 5, the 30-day timeline. Okay, so we've got the budget, we have the audience split, and we've got the creative. Now let's map out the exact chronological execution for the next month. How do you actually sequence spending this money? This right here beautifully compresses a highly complex playbook. Let's break it down. Week 1 is all about testing different hooks as cheaply as possible. You run multiple ad variations with tiny little budgets just to see which one gets the cheapest clicks. Then, week 2 requires ruthless discipline. You have to kill the losing ads immediately, even if you personally loved the creative, and doubled on your budget on the proven winners. By week 3, you scale the winning ad and start retargeting. That means showing follow-up ads specifically to the people who clicked in week 1 but didn't actually sign up yet. Finally, week 4 is purely about converting that warm audience with a strong final call to action. Literally every single dollar is designed to teach you something specific before you're allowed to move on to the next phase. Finally, Section 6, tracking the real ROI. Look, none of this brilliant creative, careful audience splitting, or precise timeline sequencing matters at all if you're flying blind. So we really need to talk about tracking the real return on investment. The strategy strictly dictates that before you spend a single dollar, you absolutely must have your tracking in place. You've got to install the Metapixel and the Google tag directly onto your sign-up page. These are essentially just invisible pieces of code that track visitor actions. You need them to accurately capture your exact cost per sign-up. And crucially, like make or break crucially, you must split that data to see exactly what it costs to acquire a pro versus what it costs to acquire a customer. If you don't know those two numbers separately, your entire marketplace model could just collapse. This quote straight from the source playbook really says it all. You cannot afford to waste it. Every dollar needs tracking. Just think about the stakes here. When you only have $100 a week, the risk is absolute. If your data is wrong, or if you aren't tracking it properly, that $400 is burned, and you've learned literally nothing. This hard data is the only metric that tells you whether month 2 is actually worth scaling with more money, or if you need to go completely back to the drawing board to pivot your core messaging. So we've seen how a micro-budget, strict audience splits, and hyper-targeted raw messaging can actually build a foundation for real growth without needing massive venture funding. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought to apply to your own bootstrapping journey, side hustles, or business projects. How are you actively tracking your own learning budgets today? Are you just flying blind and hoping for the best? Or is every single dollar actively teaching you something new? Take these lessons, apply them to your own work, keep building, and definitely keep tracking. Catch you on the next explainer.